Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of the Guest List. I am your host, Steve Guest. And for those of you that haven't perhaps listened to an episode of the Guest List before, the Guest List podcast was set up to motivate, inspire, empower a growing network of listeners and individuals that have helped and supported me along the way in terms of buying copies of the book, whether it's been through social media engagement. And I wanted a platform where I can perhaps give a little bit back. From a selfish perspective, I can get to interview some really interesting people and individuals with engaging stories, and perhaps feed that back to you, the listeners, that hopefully will get some value, be inspired, find empowerment, and go on to bigger and better things. I'm really excited and energized for today's guest, and really looking forward to discussing the topic, which is new to this podcast. We haven't had anyone previous that specializes in this area. So I feel the people that tune into this podcast will get a great deal of value. So I'm going to jump straight into this person's bio. Today's guest is a voice coach, professional speaker and best-selling author, alongside a TEDx speaker. She has helped professionals from 46 countries spanning 6 continents to speak with a more powerful voice. Today's guest has been a professional speaker and coach for the past 19 years. Originally from China and now based in Singapore, dealt with all manner of rejection and lots of naysayers at the start of the journey, but persevered and pushed through to now being on the platform and level that she is. Talking and looking through this guest's bio, there's a couple of quotes. I'm going to read one quote because it really rings true with myself. And it's a Brian Tracy quote. "It doesn't matter where you are coming from. All that matters is where you are going." And today's guest puts a lot of that journey down to that simple message. So I'd like to welcome onto today's show, Cynthia Zhai.
Sure. Thank you, Steve, for having me. I am honored and pleased to be here.
An absolute pleasure. I'm really looking forward to talking to you because it's a new topic. And for me, I think what you do and what you specialize in will add a great deal of value to people listening to today's episode. Where I'd like to start, Cynthia, if you don't mind, is just give me an overview in terms of your journey, because it hasn't been easy, has it?
No. So now we can laugh about it, but it was a lot of frustration in the beginning.
And where do you think that came from? Because you felt like you had a calling, you had a vision, you had a belief.
Yes.
But everybody around you perhaps didn't share that thought process.
That's yes. So when I wanted to do voice training and coaching, I was so excited and I shared with the wrong people. I shared with my friends, and of course, many of them, they were not entrepreneurs, so they didn't know that whether this will work. And they say, "Oh, it's not going to work." Because even today, that there are such a small number of voice coaches and trainers around the world. So people didn't see that, people didn't understand it, and they would say that, "Oh, it's not going to work." So then I turned to someone I respected, my mentor at the time. And even my mentor, who is an entrepreneur, he said, "It's not going to work." And I decided to stop talking to him.
Well, how did that make you feel, though? Because if I've been in that situation as well, and you sit there knowing and believing that you can make it work, and you have the confidence that it will be successful, but it doesn't matter which way you turn. Somebody either tries to drag you back down or just simply say, "No, that's never going to work. I'd stop now." How did that make you feel?
It was a very big blow, because especially when I heard that from my mentor. And he said, "It's not going to work. First of all, that no one was doing that. And 2 is that because you're from China, so it probably will work if you teach Mandarin."
And of course, your decision to to be a specialist within the voice coaching area,
Yes.
you're doing it in English, which isn't obviously your first language.
Yes. Yeah. So it's not my first language. That's another reason that not only my friends, but also my mentor didn't see that this would work.
Yeah.
And so I remember that day when he told me that, my heart was sinking.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking, even the person that I respected who is an entrepreneur said that, it's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
So I was frustrated and depressed for a few days.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I was thinking, what did he know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, he hadn't seen anyone doing that.
Yeah.
Especially he hadn't seen someone whose first language is not English teaching about voice training or coaching, voice projection.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I started to understand why he said it's not going to work. It's not that it's not going to work. It's more that he had not seen anyone doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So at that moment, all of a sudden, I got some awakening. And I was thinking, because no one had done that, that's why people said, it's not going to work. So I am going to make it work. And I believe I could make it work.
But that's amazing though, because there's so many elements to that story that it was so much easier just to say, do you know what? I agree. Perhaps this is the end of the road. Maybe I should go and do something that everybody else does and just generally conform to the expectation. But the ability to rise above the fact that everybody or all the naysayers are saying it will never work, to push through, that's an amazing amount of belief. Where does that come from? Where did it come from? What was lighting the fire for you to know that this was your calling?
I think there are two things. One is because I benefited from it personally.
Okay.
So when I benefited from it personally, that I knew it worked on me. If it worked on me, and I believed it will work for other people as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that's one thing. The other thing, I think, so it looks like you have some question.
No, I was going to say, so in terms of it's worked for you, how did it work? What was it that started the journey?
Yes. So the reason that I was doing the voice training and coaching was because in my very first job as a fresh graduate, I was being bullied by the boss.
Okay.
I was being shouted at every day for even the minor mistake that I made. And I was frustrated. I was not assertive. And when I finally decided to quit the job, my best friend, and at the time, said, Cynthia, you're not assertive. You need to learn how to be more assertive. Mm-hmm. So in my search for more assertiveness, I stumbled upon the speaking voice. Mm-hmm. And even though I had training in singing, but singing voice and speaking voice, there are still differences. And I realized when I improved my own speaking voice, I felt very different. I felt that kind of like there's a unknown source of confidence that I gained. It's a higher level of confidence. So at the moment I remembered clearly, this is powerful. And that's why that I knew it worked.
And what did you do to find that confidence or that assertiveness? What did you have to go through to get to that point?
So there are a lot of things happened, a lot of things that I've learned. So including, for example, mindset, including how I end my sentences. So when I was not assertive, I was ending my sentences sounding like a question, like doubting myself. So those small things, but also at the same time that over the years, when I looked back and realized, because when I was working on my physical voice, it is to work on the body. When we work on the body, it will affect the mind. Mm-hmm. So when I so-called changed my own voice, my own speaking voice, on the body, that it affected my mind. Mm-hmm. So that's where the confidence came from, because the body is more aligned. You are more aligned with yourself. Yeah. That's where the confidence is from.
And there's so many kind of facets within that, isn't there? I think I've been on my own personal journey where, in terms of mindset and ability to have the confidence on the path that you're choosing to go, I think it all comes on the basis that you've got to practice it's almost like that muscle that you've got to train. You
Yes.
might not be the finished person here, but each step, each day that you practice, the
Yeah.
words that
Yes.
you use, the way that you hold yourself and conduct yourself, pinning your shoulders back, simple little things
Yeah.
that you can do.
Yes.
So in terms of the journey, so you've started off where you've been consistently rejected. The people around you don't believe on the path that you're choosing to go down.
Yes.
Finding this inner confidence, your first role, first employment, you weren't treated very well. And it sounds as if it was because perhaps there was a lack of confidence, perhaps not a nice environment and a nice boss or manager.
Yeah.
And you needed to go and kind of create that self-awareness of how you speak, how you
Yes.
formulate your sentences. The fact that each sentence rose to create a question makes it a little bit more nervous and less assertive.
Yeah. Yes.
Where did you go from there then? What was the next step in your journey?
Yeah, so the next step was not becoming an entrepreneur. So the next step was I continued to work for different companies.
Mm-hmm.
It was not until the last corporate job that I was doing in-house training our own employees on communication leadership. So there were a lot of people asking me, because I had developed my own voice, and they were asking me, oh, Cynthia, how do we develop our voice? And especially that at the time, that because for me, my voice is in the deeper range.
Mm-hmm.
And they know that most leaders, they have a deep voice. So they said, how do I get a deep voice? So then I realized, okay, looks like people are looking for this.
Yeah.
So those were the signs that telling me, oh, this is something that can work because there is a market need.
Yeah.
And so then that's where I decided to come out. Of course, it's also a struggle to decide to come out as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's difficult, isn't it? Because I think the moment you start to elevate who you are and what you do, if it's
Yes.
across social media platforms and various other areas, coming onto podcasts like the Guestlist, you put yourself out there to be rejected again. The ability that people can come and have another little kind of go at you and say, no, we don't need this, or that's not right, or you never do this. It can be quite scary, can't it?
Yes. So over the years, that's why, that we have to constantly work on ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Rejection was something that one of the things that I was most afraid of. In my first job, I was talking about that part of the job was also including a little bit sales, but I performed the worst because I couldn't take the rejection.
Yeah.
And coming out of the corporate was something that if I were to start my own business, I had to face rejection all the time. Yeah. So that was one of the biggest areas that I worked on. To learn, for example, one of the things, rejection is not about rejecting us. So even just realizing that took a long time.
Yeah.
So I think now,
it's difficult.
It is.
I think a lot of the listeners to this podcast work in recruitment and work in sales, and working in recruitment is high levels of rejection consistently and constantly, every day, every week. And I think I always say that recruitment consultants have to have the backbone of a rhino. It's almost like that it just gets deflected. The shots and the levels of rejection keep coming, and the ability to rise above that, knowing that it's not personal, it's part of the process, it's going to happen along the way, so accept it as it comes and try and learn from it, I think is one of the biggest lessons, certainly for me as well. Okay, so if there are people listening to this podcast and let's say they lack a little bit of confidence and they're not overly assertive, are there exercises or are there things that listeners can go and do or practice to help build that powerful voice?
Yes. So the very first thing they want to do is to record themselves,
Okay.
which most people would feel cringing when listening to themselves.
Yeah.
But that would be the first thing. I always tell my clients, I said, if you don't want to listen to your own voice, think about the people who have been around you. They're suffering.
Yeah, it's so true, isn't it? How often do we listen to ourselves speak?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you will hear that what is it that it doesn't sound confident. It could be, for example, in my early days was that I was using the so-called upward inflection, which is ending the sentence sounding like a question. So that could be one thing. Or it could also be that the way you're speaking, the energy is losing at the end of the sentence.
Okay.
Like what I'm demonstrating right now. So then your voice is fading off at the end of the sentence. It also doesn't project confidence.
Yeah.
Or the third most common problem could be that you're speaking, well, you're not using your breath. You're just holding your breath and speak. Many of my clients thought that they have a soft voice, but the real problem is that they're holding the breath. And then after a while, they will feel breathless.
Okay.
So that's the third problem.
Yeah.
These three most common problems, they need to listen to the recording to identify which one is their problem. If, let's say, yes.
I was going to say, I've never done that and never heard of the concept of recording voice.
Yes.
I know, talking from personal experience, I'm born and bred from Birmingham, which is in the West Midlands in the UK, and the accent sometimes gets a little bit of stick from people because it's the West Midlands, Birmingham, Brummie accent, and listening to yourself sends all these little voices in my head saying, you don't want to do that. And I guarantee there will be people listening to this that will think the same. But actually, if it's just you listening, I'm sure people can cope.
Yes.
Some really good value there. I think we don't often evaluate or assess how we speak or what we do with our words and sentences.
Yeah. So these are the three common problems. The first two, they are easier to correct them. The first one, if you realize your sentence is going up, then you just make sure that it sounds like a statement instead of a question. The second one, which is the voice is fading off, make sure that the energy is consistent throughout the sentence. And the third one, if you realize you are holding your breath and speak, which I can say that happens to almost everyone. Some of my clients, they thought, oh, it doesn't happen to me. But once they went back, they realized there were certain situations they caught themselves holding the breath. So you want to observe when you're holding the breath while trying to speak. If you realize that, then you need to find an opportunity to quickly, not taking a breath in, but breathe out. Because the breath is already been holding, so you have to let it go first. Then you take another breath in and use the breath to speak.
That's some really good points there. I learned a long time ago, and I'm not sure whether you'd perhaps class it as old school sales, but if I'm making a sales call and it's a client that I need to be attentive to and make sure I listen, I stand up and I will walk around. And on so many occasions, I've had sales consultants that will sit at their desk and they'll be on the phone and their head will drop and they'll get closer to their desk. So they become quieter, slower, and less. It almost feels as if they're not interested because they're not upright. They're not walking around. They've got there's no distractions around them other than the voice and the conversation.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, standing up is a very good way.
Yeah, or going in. I used to walk into a meeting room and close the door because there wasn't any outside noises. There wasn't anything else happening around me. And you're completely in the conversation.
Yes.
Okay, so in terms of your growth and pushing through all that level of rejection and things, were there people around you that inspired you, people that stood out and gave you that self-belief to kind of keep moving forward?
Yes, there are quite a lot of them. There are well-known people. There are also people who are not well-known, who are people just my friends. So when I saw that they able to make it, which gave me more confidence as well. So for example, just now I was talking about, I said it took me another struggle or frustration to finally decide to come out of the corporate world. One of the inspirations was from a friend. So I was hesitating whether I should start my own business, because starting your own business was terrifying. And at the same time, I also felt I was dead working in the company.
Yeah.
I couldn't decide until one day, a friend of mine, he said, he is 2 years younger than I am. He said, I just started my own business. And I thought, what? Even him? If I don't start, it will be too late.
Yeah.
So that was one inspiration.
It's true, isn't it? I mean, the fact that you said there's lots of people and each individual has a different impact or a different reason for you to progress. And I think the main sentiment there is you surround yourself with the right people, whether
That's
it's literal, whether it's people on YouTube or podcasts or audio. It's making sure that the people around you are propelling you forward.
Yes. Yeah.
Because if there's people that you're close to that have trodden the path, or actually even through the fact that they've told you, I've started my business.
Yeah.
You've taken that as, well, if you can do it, I should be doing it. You're a few years younger than me. How have you gone and done it? If you can do it, then I can definitely do it. It's that sort of conversation, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Surround yourself with the right people and stay open-minded.
And in terms of sales, so let's go back to the voice and the power of it. If we can become more aware and improve the voice, what sort of impact is that likely to have in terms of our own control of the sales process, our own management of how we conduct ourselves?
So the very first thing would be that people will place more trust. One of the most wanted voices in my clients is the Morgan Freeman voice.
That is a good voice. Yeah.
Yes. So some of my clients who work in sales, insurance, they came to me, they said, I want to sound like Morgan Freeman. I said, what do you like about his voice? They said, he sounds very credible. Whatever he sells, I would buy it. And so when you have a good voice, it automatically helps you to build this trust and credibility. So that's the very first impact of a good voice.
Yeah, and that's huge in sales as well. To build the trust, to build that capability is very difficult to do. And I think you need as many things going in your favor as possible.
Yeah, that's right.
Are there kind of daily exercises or daily things that we can do to practice or ensure that our mindset's correct, the way that we speak and talk to our clients and audiences? Are there things that we can do on a daily basis that help that?
Yeah. Yes. So usually they will need to develop their voice in a period of time. So for most of my clients, 6 months to develop the so-called Morgan Freeman voice. But you have your own version of Morgan Freeman's voice, which is much more confident, much more credible. At the same time, it's very relaxed. So every day they can do some exercises. For example, in the beginning, what I recommend them to do, number one is to find all kinds of ways to relax. Because the best voice comes from the most relaxed body. And when you're nervous, your voice is not going to sound good. Most of the times when people are nervous, their voice will be trembling or going high pitched or going fast paced. So they need to find ways to relax. One thing I ask my clients to do is very simple, is just to make a sigh. It's just like, So it's so simple, so simple that people doubt how effective it can be. Isn't that interesting? When it's simple, we think it's not going to work.
Yeah, we like to overcomplicate things, don't we? I think that's half the problem sometimes.
Yeah, so I would recommend them, for example, before they jump into a sales call, they can do a few sighing. to make sure that they are releasing the tension. So some of my clients, they even went to do some research, and they realized that when you're sighing, you're actually generating more positive hormones.
Okay.
So that's one thing they can do. And then the other thing is, we mentioned that when they're speaking, if they're on sales calls, it will be good if they can record themselves. Then they will see what problems are. And they can, when they realize they're holding the breath, so they need to pay attention to whether they're holding the breath. Because when you're holding your breath, then there will be no trust. There's no credibility. People will feel that, oh, you sound like you're hiding something, like what I'm demonstrating right now.
Yeah.
So then when they realize they're holding the breath, again, we mentioned that they need to find an opportunity to breathe out, then take a breath in and speak. So the third quick exercise they can do also before the call is they can do some humming. Humming to not only warm up the voice, but also relax the muscle.
Yeah.
So you can just take a breath in, and then when you breathe out, you hum like, just hum.
Yeah. There's some really good ideas there. And I think back to when I was originally doing sales calls back, 15, 16 years ago. The nervousness is real because you don't want to be found out that you don't know all the answers. You don't want to say the wrong thing or ask the wrong question. And I think over time I've learned, for me anyway, I am what they'd call a high C on a disc profile. I like the research, the stats, all the information before I make decisions or jump in with 2 feet. So things like if I'm doing a presentations in front of a group of people, I would still get nervous about. It doesn't come naturally, the ability to stand up in front of people and talk. But what helps me is having done the research and knowing that I'm well informed gives me confidence to then stand up there and be able to conduct a good presentation because I feel confident that I can answer the majority of questions that are asked. And I think the ability to find out and be self-aware for what gives you that confidence to have a more assertive voice, I think helps. Do you find that as well? Do you find different characters or different types of, I suppose, personalities deal with things in a different way?
Yeah, because some people, they would need to get the information ready. So, or some people, they will need to get into the body. So you need to find out that what is it that you need the most to help you feel confident. And that's the first thing that you need to prepare. And then the second thing, which I would recommend to everyone, which is to get into the body, because the nervousness is physical. And then we will also need to use the physical to help the physical, which is the nervousness. So the physical would be including the exercises we're talking about, like sighing, like humming, and also learn the proper deep breathing. So when you're able to breathe deeply, properly, it will help you to slow down the body rhythm when you're nervous.
It's so true. So I think my rhythm is generally quite relaxed as well. I'm quite a considered person. I'm always generally on a kind of even keel, quite a level. I don't get overexcited and I don't get over kind of irate at any situation. I tend to deal with it quite, as I say, in quite a considered manner. Obviously, in recruitment and sales, you tend to get very loud, very confident, very, I suppose, gregarious characters that sometimes need to perhaps calm down a little bit and take away some of that emotion, which is quite a difficult thing as well, isn't it?
Yeah, yes. You need to come from a very objective standpoint.
Yeah. Okay. If there were 3 people that you were going to pick out, now we've mentioned the fact that you've surrounded yourself with lots of people that have helped you. If there were perhaps 2 or 3 people that stand out from everybody else, who would you who would you pick? Who would you say has perhaps made the biggest impact with you?
One, I would say that is Bill Gates.
Okay.
Yes, because one of the things was, you see that even for the past 2 years, he was being criticized by a lot of people. But I see that it didn't shake his point of view.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't shake that his ability to tell what he thinks is right, what he thinks is true.
Yeah.
So that is something that has been an inspiration for me.
Yeah, it's
which
truly
is to
powerful,
stay-
isn't it? To have that
Yes.
belief that is unwavering, even in
Yes.
kind of the face of thousands of people kind of
Yeah.
saying it's wrong, or it won't work, or that's not the right way forward.
Yes. Yeah. And then the second one is Malala.
Okay.
So Malala, at a young age, she was standing up for what's right.
Mm-hmm.
She was so brave. So I think it was an inspiration for me.
Mm-hmm.
And you see, both of them, they are also dealing with a lot of rejections as well. Even for Malala, it's a life-threatening rejection.
Mm-hmm.
So both of them, they were inspirations. And the third one is Jack Ma. So he also was rejected a lot when he started his business. Also, no one believed in him.
Yeah.
So it was also a big inspiration.
Yeah, some huge characters there as well. Okay,
Yeah.
so in terms of what you get up to and how you deliver your expertise and voice coaching, the fact that you've worked across 46 countries spanning 6 continents, I mean, that is a jet set lifestyle, isn't it? How has COVID and the pandemic and lockdowns affected that? Have you been able to continue with the voice coaching, and how have you done that?
Yes. So I was able to continue to do it online even before the COVID. I think I was one of the earliest adopters of Zoom.
Okay.
Zoom probably came out in 2014 or 15. And I remember I was using Zoom in 2015 May.
Okay. My word.
So
Yeah.
it was not a big transition, but for most of my local clients in Singapore, it was some transition for them. So they need to get adaptive to Zoom. And now they enjoy it. Some of them, they don't want to see me face to face anymore.
And if there's people that are listening to this interview and they feel that they need additional help or extra help with building that voice and that confidence and the ability to engage with their audience better, where are they best likely to find you? How would they get in contact with you?
Sure. The best place with lots of free resources would be my YouTube channel. So they can just go to YouTube and YouTube search Cynthia Voice Coach. They'll be able to find the channel. And we have over 200 videos. And it's going to, I think it's 43.7K subscribers. So our listeners are welcome to become the next to help us push to 50.
Yeah, amazing.
50K.
Yeah, that's some
yeah.
following as well on YouTube. I've only been putting this podcast on YouTube for just over a year. I think I'm up to 62 subscribers.
Okay,
definitely need some work on YouTube. That's amazing though. Okay, so they can come and find you on YouTube. Where else can they get in touch
and
with
then
you?
of course my website. So my website is powerfulexecutivevoice.com. So they'll be able to find also a lot of resources there.
Okay.
And then lastly, they can find me on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram.
Okay. Well, we'll put all the links in the show notes. Final question. I like to ask all our guests this question. For all of the listeners, everybody that's tuned into this episode, if there was one single piece of advice that you would leave the listeners with, or you'd recommend that they go and implement or do, what would that single piece of advice be?
It will be, don't take yourself too seriously. Laugh at your mistakes. So the next time when you make a mistake, celebrate it.
Yeah.
Because when you can laugh at your own mistakes, when you don't take yourself seriously, you will be able to take rejections well.
Yeah.
So
it's a really powerful statement. It's so true.
Yes.
I think we spend so much time trying to be perfect. And when it's not quite perfect, we almost beat ourselves up.
Yeah.
And it stops us in our tracks.
That's right. So the practical thing they can do is when they made a mistake, oh yeah, I made a mistake.
It's so true. Cynthia, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today.
Sure. It's a pleasure talking with you as well.